Well, countries around the world, including the U.S., agreed to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. But for that to happen, people will have to do a lot more to embrace renewable energy.
Yeah, they will. One way to do that is to switch homes to solar power. But if you're a homeowner, do the benefits outweigh the costs?
And Josh Hurwitz is a homeowner who switched to solar. He joins us now via Zoom from Norwalk, Connecticut. And thanks for joining us. So first of all, what made you decide to switch to solar? Because we know there's a certain capital out cost. You got to pay for this up front.
That is true. There are three main reasons I switched to solar. They're all very important to me. Number one, I've always been interested in reducing my carbon footprint. It had to make business sense, which it definitely has. And I also wanted to be more energy independent in case the grid goes down.
So, Josh, I would say probably the number one thing that keeps people from switching to solar is the initial cost. Were you hesitant? And what would you say to people who that is their kind of number one thing that's holding them back?
Well, I think it's very important to get a lot of estimates and talk to a lot of installers. I talked to about 5 installers, maybe 6, and went through all their quotes. I had some help with a consultant on EnergySage, which you've interviewed today already. They were great. And it really broke it down for me and showed me the numbers. For me, what I did is I took my yearly electric output, multiplied it, my cost, my electric bill every month, multiplied it by 20 years, figured I was going to recoup about 75, 80% of those costs, and that was a lot of money. So over 10 to 20 years, I expect to save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in electric. So when you put it that way, the initial outlay was pretty good. The other thing that softened the blow is that there's a lot of good tax savings, both at the local, state level, but also at the federal level. So I ended up spending about 65 cents on the dollar for the original cost.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, let's talk more about the money, because power costs different prices in different parts of the country. So each month now that you have the solar panels here, what's your energy bill now compared to pre-solar panel?
Well, first of all, I love looking at my power bill now, which before I did not. I will tell you that it's not zero, which you need to know going into this. I'd say there's about 4 months of the year where my electric bill is absolutely zero. That's fantastic. It's my favorite time of the year. I'd say there's about 3 or 4 months where the electric bill is $25, $35, $40, no big deal. And then there's about 3 or 4 months of the year, it's still about 100, 125, 150, where there's a high energy requirement, but maybe the sun's not out as much or the days are shorter. So you have to kind of look at that. In my mind, it's about 75, 80% of my electric needs are being met by solar.
That is great. So we actually spoke with a solar energy specialist last hour, and he was telling us how important it is to make sure you have the right company installing those solar panels, yes, to make sure you really search around. So could you tell us a little bit more about why that's so important for homeowners who are considering switching to solar power?
I found that the most daunting part of the project was to pick the right installer. That's the one that gave me the most anxiety. So when you interview a lot and you dig down into the contracts with the help of a consultant like that EnergySage company that you interviewed earlier, they were great. You realize that there's a lot of differences. So some are the most expensive, some are the least expensive, most of them are right in the middle, and it just depends on what they're giving you. I went with an installer that I believed on could get the job done, that knew our local variances in zoning, and I have a difficult roof with a lot of like nooks and crannies and gables and corners. So I needed someone who I knew they would actually get the job done versus someone who's better at maybe a cookie cutter installation and can just slap up on a square roof. That wasn't what I was looking for. Typically speaking, the most important thing is going to be a production guarantee, to make sure that they guarantee over 10 years that you're going to get about 90% of the electric production that they build into the system. If they don't, they'll pay the difference. That's what a production guarantee is, and I found that the most comforting part of the whole process.
And we have about 30 seconds left, Josh. You live in Connecticut, so lots of trees around. We saw some of your pictures there. Did you have to prune some trees or perhaps take some down to make sure you get maximum sun exposure?
There was one tree I had to take down. I wasn't happy about it, but it needed to come down for other reasons too, so it wasn't that difficult. Also, the region you live in, by the way, this is important. Some states have more expensive electric than others, so you really have to know your own rates. There's some states it doesn't make sense to do it in.
Little research could save you a lot of headache and a lot of money. Josh, thanks so much for talking to us this morning. I think it's so fascinating, and to hear someone who's actually done it and reaping the benefits, and he has no, stake in this. So great advice.
Yeah, so it does work, but again, do your research. As you mentioned, some parts of the country, power is so cheap right now, it doesn't make financial sense, but in the long run, it's better for the planet.